Hi everyone, it's Lisa from My Dream in Soap. Welcome to my channel and thanks for dropping by. Today's soap is part of a cat soap collaboration. Now, a while ago I made another one of my special cat embed moulds and sent it as a surprise gift to my friend Whitney from Cheeky Goat Soapery all the way over there in Florida. Now, as it happens, Whitney has very recently just started up her own YouTube channel and she's been working really hard getting videos uploaded. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to do a little collaboration. I'll leave a link to Cheeky Goat Soapery YouTube channel in the description below so you can go and see Whitney's soap and also check out her channel. Come on, let's go and make some soap. So for today's soap we're going to start off making our cat embed, and I want to do a black and white cat, so I'm going to be using activated charcoal and some titanium dioxide. Now I have recently started to pre-disperse my activated charcoal just like I do with my titanium dioxide, and that was because every now and again I was getting tiny little speckles of black when I used it, so pre-dispersing it has solved that problem. So I've measured out the total amount of oils and lye that I need to fill up my cat embed, and what I'm going to do is initially I'm just going to mix them together really well without blending them, and then I'll pour off a small amount for the white that I need and leave the rest for the black. Now for my white bits of the cat, I want it to have little white paws, a white nose area on its face and white down the chest. So I'm just going to add some titanium dioxide, and then initially I'm going to bring this to a pretty light trace because I need to be able to drop it into the very small area of the mould that has the paws. And then whilst this white batter is still nice and fluid, I'm just going to use a little pipette to make sure I can get right into those paws of the cat. And then I blended the rest of the white batter so it was nice and thick, and I'm just going to use this to pop into the face area of the cat. And then finally I'll just put some onto the edge of the mould, and that will form the white chest of the cat. And then just a little bit of tidying up and we're ready to start pouring the black. Now because I only lightly stirred my lye and oil together before I split them out, my batter here is still nice and fluid, so now I can add my activated charcoal and then bring them up to the trace that I want. I'm going to be using Loving Spell from Nature's Garden today in my soap. So once that's added to my batter, I can now just complete my cat by pouring in that black. So once everything's poured in, I do then need to build the rest of my artfully crafted wooden box around it. Otherwise, can you see how it sort of bows out in the middle? And if you don't support it, you get like really fat cats in some bars of soap, which is quite funny, but perhaps not what we want. I'll then cover up the mould, and as normal I'm going to pop this in the oven to C-pop. Remember, when you use activated charcoal and you want a nice black, it is important to make sure that your soap does go through gel to get the best possible black. So next I want to have some butterflies in my soap. I'm going to extrude these, so I've made some extruder discs, and remember, as normal, you can cut these out of some fairly heavy duty plastic if you want to make your own. And then I'm just going to extrude some black soap dough through each of the two sizes of bodies. Now, I have made a video on how I make my soap dough and store it and everything. I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to have a look at that. Once I've extruded the dough that I need, I do try and make sure that I straighten it out fairly quickly, and then I'll cut it slightly larger than I need, because as you cut it while it's wet, it squishes the little end bits a bit, so cut it slightly bigger at this stage. And then I'll just repeat the process, this time with some yellow and orange soap dough, to make the wings of the butterflies in 2 different sizes. So to put the butterflies together is actually a fairly simple process. I'm just going to take some distilled water. Remember, water to make soap dough stick together. Alcohol, rubbing alcohol, is to try and keep things clean and stop it sticking. And I'm just going to literally wet the sides of the bodies and press a wing onto each side. Just be careful when you are putting these together that you don't squash the shape out of any of the parts you've so carefully made. And then one thing I find that's really helpful is that I make these obviously slightly longer than I need, and then I really squash the ends together because I'm going to chop those off later, but it just holds everything nicely whilst they set up and stick together. Then I'll just repeat the process with the remaining butterflies, and I'll then leave them to set up. So I will put them in a container so they don't dry out too much, but I did actually leave these ones to the next day, so then the wings had actually stuck really nicely to the bodies. So the next day I just need to put the whole soap together, so I just need to make a blue sky to go around the butterflies and the cat. Now my little colour swatch there has got a letter on it rather than a number, and that means to me I've done a blend to get to that colour. So for this blend I used Shimmer Blue from Mica Mama and some titanium dioxide, and I always note the ratios that I use to make these blends up. I've unmoulded my cat, and then I've kept it wrapped nicely so that it doesn't dry out too much, and therefore it will bond to the remaining soap nicely. So that now can just be popped into my mould and set aside until I need it. So the rest of my soap is just going to be the sky surrounding the cat and the butterflies, and I'm just going to do a straightforward in the pot swirl. Now when you're making a soap that's using embeds, ideally you want to pour the correct amount of soap batter around the embeds so that you're not falling short or you're wasting stuff or having to make those funny little extra soaps that you don't really need. So the best way to do this is to take all the embeds that you've made and weigh them all. So pop them on a tray or something and stick them on the scales and take note of the weight of those embeds. Then what you want to do with that is times that by the oil percentage that's in your normal recipe, well, the recipe that you used to make these embeds. So let's say, for example, that the total weight of my embeds was 400 grams. Obviously, you can do this in ounces if you use ounces. My standard recipe is 72% of oil. So therefore, I can see that the oils used to make those embeds were 288 grams. And it's that you want to take away from your normal recipe that you use to fill the mould. So for me, the recipe that I use to get the bar height that I want in this mould is 1040 grams of oil. So I know if I take away the 288 grams of oil in those embeds, I now need to make up 752 grams of oil to get the right amount to fill my mould. So as you can see, I've made up the soap batter that I need, and I'm just weighing the total amount so I can split it out into the two parts. I'm going to have a smaller amount for the white elements of the sky and then the larger amount for the blue. And then when I've got everything mixed, I'll add my fragrance oil and just make sure I give it a good stir in, and then I'm ready to pour. So I'm just going to do a basic in the pot swirl here. Now, I'm not worried about my colours staying too separate. I kind of want that wispy look in the sky, so I'm pouring it here at a thinner trace than you normally would perhaps for an in the pot swirl, and I am going to let it muddle around a bit and give a little bit of a stir. So then I'll just make sure I've got all the embeds and my mould and everything sorted, and I can start pouring things into the mould. So I'm going to start with some of that blue and white batter and just holding that cap down so it doesn't start floating. And then I'll just gradually build the rest of the soap up, dropping in a butterfly every now and again until the mould's full. Now my batter here is pretty fluid, but it's thick enough to hold those butterflies up and stop them sinking. But it's also fluid enough that it pours nicely around all those funny little shapes in the butterflies, and it stops it from leaving any of those little air holes that you can get if you try and pour a batter that's slightly too thick around a trickily shaped embed. Then let's just finish off the top of the soap. So as you can see here, I've got some teeny weeny little butterflies. Now I haven't made these separately. What I did was I made sure that my embeds for the inside were slightly too long, and then I've just sliced off those extra bits and sliced them into skinny slices so I could then pop them on the top of the soap. I've then got a tiny little bit of batter that I saved from the main soap, and I'm just going to colour that with some titanium dioxide. Now I'm going to use a little pipette to put this on the top of the soap, so I want it to stay really quite fluid, but not so fluid that I lose the pattern. So I'm just going to do a little tester just on my side first of all, just to see the consistency. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to pop it onto the soap. So to finish off, I'm going to use that pipette just to drop on some little paw prints onto the soap top. And then I'll just go over the little toe pads from the paws so I can get the little claws coming out of the cat paws. And then here's a look at the finished top with its little butterfly and its little cat paws. And then as normal, I'll cover my soap and wrap it, and I'll put it in the oven to C-pop it, so in at 170 degrees Fahrenheit, 75 degrees centigrade. Turn the oven off as soon as the soap goes in. I C-pop my soap because I do quite a decent water discount. Remember, if you don't do a water discount, or maybe if you add honey or something to your soap, you probably will not need to C-pop it to make it go through gel. And then the next day I unmoulded it, and we're now ready to cut. So here's our little black and white tuxedo cat with his little white paws and his little white face and his little white belly chasing those butterflies. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you like the soap. If you have, it would be great if you left me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see what I'm doing in the future, why not subscribe to my channel? And if you've got any queries or comments, then please leave them in the comments section below and I will get back to you. Thanks for watching everyone. Happy soaping!